Good evening, friends. Okay, so we'll continue from where we left yesterday. So we have already talked about the system analysis, what we mean by system analysis, and I'll give you one question, and with this question we'll discuss explain, or better write, examine the pros and cons of use of system analysis in geography. $15 marks. ठीक है, so let us try this answer. I am giving you 3 minutes. Think how you will be writing this answer. Examine the pros and cons of the use of system analysis in geography. One minute. Okay. Tell me, suppose if I talk about first the introduction, what we can write in the introduction? Anyone? कोई बता सकता है? If I was writing, I could have used a very traditional type of introduction in this question. I could have said that although Ludwig von Bertalanffy developed system analysis, comma, it was pioneer geographers like Berry and Shorley who used and popularized it in geography. Yes or no? This can be a good introduction. Then we'll go on to write the main body, and in the main body we'll talk about use of system analysis in geography has its own pros and cons. Then after that it would be much better if you start using the headings. So you talk about first the pros of system analysis in geography. So tell me, can I say pros of system analysis in geography? One very important advantage of use of system analysis in geography is that geography deals with multivariate complex phenomena which is simplified by use of system analysis. Yes or no? पहले भी हम इसकी बात कर चुके हैं. And tell me, can I give example here? So we yesterday gave the examples of the how step 1 is that of morphological systems, step 2 would be that of cascading systems, step 3 would be the process response systems. We can talk about this with examples. Both हमने दिए थे physical geography, human geography, so that you can talk about. So that is first pros and cons of use of system analysis. Then second very important advantage of the use of system analysis in geography is that system analysis allows high level of flexibility. It allows high level of flexibility with respect to the geographical phenomena or subject matter to be studied as well as the scale of study to be chosen. The scale of study to be chosen. Now I have to prove what I am saying here. So tell me, can I say system analysis can be used in study of variety of type of systems? Tell me, can I say we can talk about a climatic system? Yes or no? In climatic system, which would be the main variables? Tell me, कौन से variables होंगे? Can we talk about variables like the average annual temperature, range of temperature, average annual precipitation, seasonal distribution of precipitation, etc. Yes or no? So can we talk about a climatic system? Winds, इसमें मैं include कर सकता हूँ so many variables. Similarly, tell me, can we include system? Can we do system analysis study with respect to landform systems or geomorphic systems? Yes or no? Where already हमने example दिया था, slope example. We can talk about, can we use this type of analysis in environmental geography? Like ecosystem is a very good example of use of system analysis in geography. Similarly, can we deal with use this system analysis even in other systems like social systems, or social के बजाय you use the word cultural system. So when we are talking about cultural system, tell me, what would be the components of this cultural system? Cultural system component would be variety of things, including the language, religion or faith, economic activity, race. ठीक है? So again, we can essentially etc. talk about cultural systems. We can talk about economic systems, like take the example of an agricultural system. So if I am talking about agricultural system, tell me what would be the components of agricultural system? Can I say very important component of agricultural system would be the inputs which are to be used, the land tenure, और इसको इस तरह से लिख सकते हैं, एग्रो okay, it is back now. Okay, so economic systems, agricultural systems. One example we talked about the agricultural systems. So agroecological components, infrastructural components, institutional components, several things we can essentially talk about and define. Okay. So same thing, like we can talk about political systems, etc., etc. Enough examples. So one, it provides with respect to the phenomena or the subject matter that we are going to study. as well as the scale of study to be chosen. Scale of study, with respect to scale of study to be chosen. Tell me, can I say that again we can go for macro scale, studies? Like for example, tell me, when I am talking about the case of in geomorphology, we will see, for example, we can use the scale from, we can talk about first order, second order, third order, fourth order, fifth order landforms. From my side, speed is consistent, so I don't think that it is my issue. It must be from your side. Okay, so macro scale और सीधे scale, macro मत लिखो, we'll just talk about scale. So one example of scale used in geomorphology, we can use various forms of spatial scales. And if you talk about, similarly, they have used temporal scales like cyclic time, graded time, steady time. Temporal scale. ठीक है? So you can give one example of from physical geography where we are using variety of scales. And like for example, we can also give with respect to some other elements, like in other parts of geography we can take variety of scale. Like for example, we can use system analysis when understanding continental scales, subcontinental scales, regional scales, sub-regional scales, even we can talk about local scales. Geological time already हमने बात कर लिया, where we talked about cyclic, graded and steady time. Okay, so in other parts we can definitely talk about the, here these are the spatial scales that can be talked about as systems. We can use system analysis with respect to them. ठीक है? So another very important advantage is the level of flexibility that is provided by system analysis. Come on yaar, my speed is consistently same. Again and again I am checking, but it is consistently same. बीच में जब गायब हो गया था it became 0, but after that again it is consistently same. So this is second pros we can talk about. Third pros of system analysis, if I talk about, is that with use of system analysis, various approaches prevalent in geography can be understood. Various approaches prevalent in geography can be understood. And if I give examples of this point, so tell me, for example, did we saw that how the case of von Thunen agricultural location model, this was understood with help of which type of system we could better comprehend this model? Did we saw that it could be better comprehended with the case of isolated systems model? Similarly, if you talk about the division normal cycle of erosion theory, we can understand this approach through use of which system analysis? Use of closed system perspective we can understand this. There are several others, like for example, when I am talking about a cultural system, okay, again we can understand a cultural system with the perspective of open or partially open systems, ठीक है. और दिस पार्शली ओपन सिस्टम्स को एक और टर्म हम यूज करते हैं, दीज आर कंट्रोल्ड सिस्टम्स. what enters and what not enters is being controlled, ठीक है. So again, like for example, a country, we are letting some things to enter, some people to enter, some information to enter, others we are not allowing them, ठीक है. So cultural systems can be understood as controlled systems through the perspective of control systems. Others like we'll talk about एटमॉस्फेरिक, लेकिन हम यहाँ पे अप्रोचेस की बात कर रहे हैं. सो लेट मी जस्ट हियर वी कैन टॉक अबाउट लाइक जेटी हैक्स डायनामिक इक्विलिब्रियम. कंसेप्ट, इट कैन बी अंडरस्टूड. देखो बहुत सारे टर्म्स में यूज कर रहा हूँ विच वी हैवंट स्टडीड टिल नाउ, बट दे विल कम लेटर ऑन. So you'll ultimately understand if you remember this. So you have to at this point do what? You have to memorize. So JT Hack's dynamic equilibrium concept, it can be understood with the respective of open systems approach. ठीक है. So systems approach also helps us in understanding variety of different approaches which have been prevalent in geography. So that is another one. Then fourth, ये पहले पॉइंट लिख सकते थे when we were talking about subject matter. So you can say that systems analysis has potential for cross field application. That is, in other words, can be applied in both physical and human geography. Thus, what it provides? It provides a future potential for development of a meta theory, which is referred to as the general systems theory. And this general system theory, can I say, would would provide synthesis of subject matter in geography. Tell me yes or no. The much required, it would provide the much required synthesis of subject matter in geography. So this is essentially again what? Another advantage, a potential advantage of the use of system analysis in geography. समझ में आ गया? Pros? Yes or no? Tell me. Did you also learn one very important thing? That I essentially had only 4 points. Did you see that? I essentially had only 4 points, but just by expanding these 4 points with examples, how much more I can write if my purpose is to fill all the pages, how much I can write just by expanding it with examples. Okay, so many times in many topics you will be facing the same issue, that you will have lesser number of points. So how you can enrich your answer if you are facing this problem? You can essentially elaborate it with very valid examples. Okay? So this is the pros of system analysis in geography. Cons of system analysis in geography. Okay. So if you talk about cons, here also we will see number of cons are limited. More very importantly, that if you talk about the cons, one very important con is that yes, Pushkar is correct, and he says that very importantly, system analysis does what? It leads to oversimplification. Leads to oversimplifications and over generalizations in geography. Oversimplifications and overgeneralizations in geography. Let us take examples. For example, let us first take that case of slope. So when we were talking about the slope systems, it has been frequently found that when we are talking about here, can I say here there was selective choice of components. Selective choice of components was done, and without much validity, without much logic. For example, when we talked about the cascading systems, morphological systems, tell me, we included the 4 elements of the slope, but can I say many important elements excluded? Excluded from the study. And what is that which was excluded from the study? Like structure of rocks. Did we include the structure of rocks? Like, for example, which type of rocks are present, whether there is folding in the rocks, faulting in the rocks, what is the chemical composition of the rocks, porosity, permeability. We didn't include such variables. Similarly, you tell me, here we talked about debris slope, but did we talk about the size of sediments making the debris slope? Did we talk about that? No, we didn't talk about that. Did we talk about other important components like vegetation? No, we didn't talk about. All these were left out from the purview of study. Similarly, if I talk about, we talked about the cascading systems. We talked about number of processes, but did we talk about other processes like, for example, phenomena of leaching? Did we include? No, we didn't include the phenomena of leaching. Did we include phenomena like biotic processes, or what we call them as bioturbation processes? We didn't include. They can also, in so many slopes, vegetation plays a very, very important role in geomorphic processes, but again it was excluded from the purview of the study. Okay, so that is what here we are saying. We can lead to what? It can lead to oversimplification of the phenomena. Same thing happens in case of the human systems. For example, we let us see that one of the very classic examples of use of system analysis was done in limits to growth model. It is a topic of economic geography, limits to growth model. Now, in limits to growth model, it utilizes mainly 5 variables. 5 variables which would ultimately lead to, which would tell us what would be the future population growth, economic growth. So, these 5 variables included variables like population growth, resource availability, agricultural output, industrial output, and pollution. Tell me, can I say that again it simply seems overgeneralization? Like for example, what about other variables which can play important roles? For what about other variables which can play important role? Like, tell me, cultural practices, like the political structure, yes or no? Tell me. Separately taking the factor of, although he talked about technological innovation in the resource topic, so we'll leave that. But again, these many other factors can play very important role in how we ultimately, for example, today limits to growth says that no matter what you do, there would be limits to growth. Okay, but can I say this idea was based upon the fact that there is use and throw culture present in the world. If we move from use and throw culture to the culture of sustainable consumption, tell me, can we say that we would be able to maybe avoid limits to growth? Many of the problems are rising just because we are over consuming. Okay? So again, this is a very classical example of how system analysis was used to predict a future which already has proved, because all their predictions which they talked about that this would happen in 30 years, 40 years time, all those have not come to fruition. Are we clear about this point? Tell me. So that is one of the limitations of limits to growth. Second very important limitation is that limits to growth, system analysis involves high level of subjectivity. High level of subjectivity. So subjectivity is there with respect to number of things, like for example, subjectivity with respect to choice of elements and processes. So many times our predetermined, और many के बजाय लिखो most of the times, most of the times our predetermined value systems and goals determine the choice of these variables एलिमेंट्स, प्रोसेसेस एंड स्केल यहाँ पर लिख लो, चॉइस ऑफ दीज वेरिएबल्स। ठीक है, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल अभी हमने एग्जाम्पल दिया द केस ऑफ लिमिट्स टू ग्रोथ, हाउ selectively many of the things were left out just to prove a point. What was the main point they wanted to prove? That developing world population growth is harmful, and in the process what they did, they avoided so many factors, so many elements, so many processes were avoided. ठीक है, similarly if you talk about scale, choice of scale, so like for example you take the case of JT hack, and his choice of scale is small scale, because his idea was already motivated by views or equilibrium views of G.K. Gilbert. So in geomorphology we'll see that it was first G.K. Gilbert who gave the concept of equilibrium, and this simply motivated hack, he essentially uses a model of small scale to prove that the division model, which was built on a different scale, a larger scale, ठीक है, which was built upon the larger scale to ultimately talk about landform development. So to contradict the Division idea, he is using a small scale. So again it becomes what? It becomes very subjective and arbitrary. ठीक है. So that is second very important problem. Third very important problem is that use of system analysis in geography has been criticized as a positivist attempt, as a positivistic attempt, and reason we already know. System analysis stresses too much on the fixed characteristics of variables and fixed relations between them. Full stop. You can say that it has been criticized by the humanists that many variables, particularly human variables, can not be clearly defined. Cannot be clearly defined. Like for example, values, feelings, ethics, etc. They cannot be clearly defined. So, what humanists do? Humanists thus find that system analysis to be not suitable to study human geography. Human geography. बात समझ में आ गई? So this is another very important criticism against which has been leveled against the system analysis. So 3 criticism हमने बात कर लिए and 2 prawns we talked about, which you can write there. And then I can ultimately conclude afterwards, and I can say that despite these shortcomings, it has to be understood that system analysis offers a wide range of flexibility which can definitely be handy in dealing with complex geographical phenomena. Complex geographical phenomena. So many of you are saying I am exceeding the word limit, but मैंने क्या तुमको बोला? Did I tell you that you write all examples? Tell me. Did I ever say that you have to write all the examples? Yes or no? Did I ask you? There is difference between what I will be writing as an answer and what, again, you try to understand the difference. Here I am communicating with you. You people are naive. You people don't have that much understanding of the subject matter. So here I have to elaborate that subject matter by using as many examples as I can so that it becomes crystal clear to you. And that is why I am using so many examples here. But when you will be writing an actual answer, do you have liberty to use so many examples? तो थोड़ा सा लॉजिक लगाओ यार, फालतू के क्वेश्चन पूछता रहता है. इतनी बार इस चीज को मैं रिपीट कर चुका हूं. That when I am talking to you, my perspective, my listeners have different level. When you will be writing, you will be talking, your listener, your reader has a different level. So you will not be explaining each and every aspect, each and every point. Advantage में yes, you can talk about that. It can also help in the interdisciplinary. वैसे already हमने inter subject matter वाले में वो बात किया. So this is the pros and cons of the utilization of system analysis in geography. So I hope it is clear to you. Let us talk about that other question that we talked about. What was that question? It was, I think, explore the concept of region as a system. Again, I'll give you 3 minutes. Now you have studied already system analysis, so I think that you will be in a position to ultimately answer some of this. Sachin is saying, please show the last slide. Okay, so if we talk about this, explore the concept of region as a system. So यहाँ पर I'll be telling you some new things. When you are talking about von Thune and Weber model, you have to understand that they are not regional models. They are systematic models. So you cannot use von Thune and Weber model here. Okay, so I am going to dictate you write something. So you please write here. So you can start your answer with a specific introduction I am giving you here. In 1924, much before systems approach became popular, Carl Sawyer wrote. 15 marks. This question is 15 marks again, like the previous one. That is, you'll be getting around 3 pages. Can be even smaller. So Carl Sawyer wrote. Landscape is an area made up of distinct association. Distinct association of forms, both physical and cultural. Full stop. It is not an isolated phenomena. It is not an isolated phenomenon, comma, its identity is based on constitution, limits and generic relation to other landscapes which constitute a general system. So you can see that Sawyer was using this idea of systems approach even much before systems analysis, a decade before in fact. Systems analysis came into being, and even more before it became popular in geography. We know it became popular in geography in 50s and 60s. Okay? So this can be one introduction where you can start. So you can further say several geographers have argued that years or that classical geography applied the systems approach unconsciously, naively, long before other sciences used it, as concretely expressed by Sawyer in the above given para. ठीक है. So see, अभी मैं I'll explain this point, but what has been argued by many geographers that what was system analysis doing? It was already being done before by the geographers, particularly the regional geographers. Regional geographers were taking regions. They were talking about spatial systems. Regions could be considered as simply a spatial system, where like a system, region also has its boundaries, which can be fully defined or they may be only partially defined. They may be real boundaries or they may be imagined boundaries. Like systems, regions also have their components, which can be, like Sawyer here says, broadly can be categorized into physical and cultural components. So again, and they are basically what? They are made up of distinct association, you see. So like in systems, components are interlinked, associated with each other. Here also there is association of these physical and cultural components. Okay. Similarly, like in a system is not an isolated phenomena. Always a system is part of a bigger system. That means there is a hierarchy of systems present. and this ultimately forms a general system, a bigger system. So, if we continue to ultimately interlink the systems, identify the similarities in the systems, we will be able to ultimately reach the goal of the general systems or the general systems theory. Okay. So, can we say a same thing is happening even in the regions? Yes or no? Tell me. This is what is the crux of writing this answer. Okay. So, you can hear introduced, in fact, that in 1978, Bennett and Shorley identified two families of systems. And if I talk about two families of systems, according to them, then first type of system they called it as hard systems. And if you talk about hard systems, are the type of systems which became popular in the with the discovery of systems approach by Berta Lanfy. Okay. So, such systems are what? Hard systems are susceptible to rigorous specifications quantifications and mathematical predictions. Such type of systems are mainly utilized in natural sciences. Okay. So, first one type of systems they talk about is hard systems, but they also describe another type of systems which they call as soft systems. So, soft systems are these are cognitive systems, that means more mental systems, cognitive systems which are not treatable by methods of mathematics. Full stop. They are soft, not rigorous not rigorous, boundaries susceptible to integration and they are not always clearly, or they are not always clearly defined realms. Despite this, soft systems remain within the definitions of system, within the definition of systems. So how they remain within the definition of systems? So if you define systems, they represent what? They represent as a set of logical operations acting upon and acted upon by one or more inputs, leading to production of outputs. Leading to production of outputs from the system, by a process of throughput, which is capable of either sustaining the operational structure of the system or transforming it. ठीक है. So this is nothing but a technical definition of what is a system. ठीक है. So it is nothing but here it is a technical definition of what essentially we mean by a system. So if you look into soft systems, clearly they cannot be quantified. The variables cannot be quantified, very clearly defined. Despite that, broadly speaking, they remain, or they are still what? They are a system. ठीक है. So can you understand the difference between hard systems and soft systems? Yes or no? Tell me. So, geographers have asserted that regions are nothing but regions and इसमें एक और वर्ड ऐड कर लो, regions and regional approach are nothing but use of soft systems in geography unconsciously. Full stop. Regions satisfy most of the ideal, or not, don't write ideal, most of the significant characteristics of systems. So tell me, can we now write what are these characteristics? 1. Systems represent whole made up of parts or elements. Can we say that same is true with a region which broadly has two elements, namely physical and cultural? Yes or no? So we can talk about that. Similarly, if you talk about systems system components or elements are linked to each other in a meaningful relationship. Each other in a meaningful relationship. Can I say in regional approach, comma, particularly chorological approach, the focus is on causally interlinking the components of a region. To understand the unique characteristic of that region and aerially differentiate it from other regions in geographical space. So second very important way in which we can say that regions represent that case of a system. Then here also what we find, इसमें और ऐड कर सकते थे. यू कुड हैव एडेड हियर द एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द इंटरलिंकेज इज थ्रू प्रोसेसेस which are operating. They in fact interlink them to each other, the components of a system. ठीक है. Then you can talk about third very important aspect is that systems always are part of a hierarchy of systems. Hierarchy of systems. Same is true with concept of regions. Several scholars have asserted on the exploration of the hierarchy of regions present in geographical space. Present in geographical space. You know, we have already talked about this. How in fact first very important was, if you remember, Karl Ritter talked about this. It was other person, later it was talked about by Richthofen. This idea was further reiterated by Alfred Hettner. Later, if you talk about, it was Richard Hartshorne who reiterated this understanding of the hierarchy of the systems. ठीक है. टेल मी, अगर मुझे इंटरलिंकेजेस के एग्जाम्पल देने हैं, like in this I could have given examples at this point. Like for example, could I have given the case of Vidal, how he was trying to search interlinkages? Could I have given the case of Ritter, the concept of unity of Ritter essentially expressed this same phenomena. This was essentially the main aspect of Hettner finding this interlinkages, and Hartshorne. Yes or no? When we are talking about these interlinkages, the processes, could we have also given the name of these scholars here as examples that they have done the same thing? Yes or no? So if we just write it like this, we would be in a position to ultimately justify that the concept of region has lots of similarities with the concept of systems. ठीक है. So I have written and ultimately I can conclude here. So in the conclusion, essentially I can say that any approach, utility lies in its flexibility, which it offers in understanding of complex real world phenomena. Same is true with systems approach, as it offers enough flexibility flexibility to understand the regional approach as well as remove its over descriptive flaws, and make it more relevant and applied. So this can be our conclusion. This point, can you understand? Remove its over descriptive flaws. What was one of the big problems that we saw in the traditional regional approach? Can we say that one of the biggest problem which was seen was that the traditional regional approach was very much concerned with description of phenomena. Many of these phenomena were not even necessary for the purpose of the problem to be solved. It was over descriptive. And what is the crux of regional approach? Tell me. Crux of regional approach, system approach is that you choose only those variables where there seems to be a meaningful interrelationship. Yes or no? Tell me. We are choosing those variables where there seems to be a meaningful interrelationship. The key word was meaningful there. So it not only has its flexibility not only offers us to better understand and comprehend the regional approach which has been in use in geography, but also improve upon the regional approach. ठीक है? Are we clear about this question? So this is essentially your systems analysis in geography. So now I am going to move on to our next topic. If you have any problems, you can ask me now, or I will continue with our new topic, which is behavioral approach in geography. At this point, again I am stressing you the same thing, that it would be futile if you search for other content either. You just have to do what? You just have to memorize the handouts and what we are writing in the class. It is actually much more than enough. If you still face that you have scarcity of content, then the problem, that is just a symptom. Problem lies in the fact that you are not doing enough answer writing practice. Once you do answer writing practice, you will see that you have actually enough content and a very, very quality content. Okay. Also, one thing, did you see that in this previous question which we were dealing with, that how this question looked very typical for me. This looked very, very different. That first impression क्या होगा इसको पढ़ने के बाद कि अरे ये तो मुझे आता ही नहीं है. Yes or no? This would be the first impression that a person would get, because directly actually he would have never studied this. ठीक है? एंड इफ आई जस्ट लीव फ्यू थिंग्स जो मैंने स्टार्टिंग में कुछ फ्लावरी कुछ स्पेसिफिक्स बताए, लाइक सॉयर का एक स्टेटमेंट लिखवा दिया एंड दिस कंसेप्ट ऑफ हार्ड एंड सॉफ्ट सिस्टम्स which I talked about, can I say from here, which is the main aspect of the question, which is the main content of the question, didn't we have already studied these 3 points? This was the main content of the question. Answer. Haven't we already studied this? And how beautifully I was able to interlink. You know why I was able to interlink it? Just because in my memory, what is the case? All these are very systematically memorized and arranged. ठीक है? I have studied them so many times that the things are, the pictures are very crystal clear in my mind, and they are broken into parts, and these parts are interlinked to each other. So what I can do whenever I need to justify something, I need to prove something, explain something, I can just pick up the relevant parts and interconnect it with the other part which is to be done, and I would do that. It is just here, it was the classic example of how system analysis works. ठीक है? Are we clear about this? Answer writing is essentially that, system analysis. Okay. Here Yogesh is asking, please one time explain the general system theory. ठीक है, जल्दी से मैं उसको भी बता देता हूँ. General system theory. So as we said, general system theory was first attempted by Ludwig Berta Lanfy. He developed systems approach in biological sciences, but later discovered that most of the tenets of this approach could also be applied to other sciences, including the social sciences. Thus, he endeavored to develop a general system theory which could be applied across the disciplines. across the disciplines. ठीक है, so first ये बात हो गया. And then we can say in geography, it was Berry who tried to develop, in fact it was Berry and Shorley who tried to develop a general system theory for geography. Full stop. They felt that the interdisciplinary nature of geography demanded development of such a theory. Full stop. Its development was beneficial or essential to attain the required unity and synthesis in geography. ठीक है. So then you can mention here that general system theory refers to an attempt to develop a meta theory which is equally relevant and applicable to all the branches and sub branches of geography. Full stop. Berry tried to develop such theory by comparing river systems with urban systems. So as we have seen before, when you talk about a river system, so this is one river, there is second ranking rivers, then there are several like this third ranking rivers. ठीक है. If you talk about a city, same is true in case of city. There is a large city below which there are several smaller level cities, and below them there is further, if you talk about like smaller level cities are present. Okay, so here it is first ranking river, this one is the second ranking river, and this is the third ranking river. Here the larger one is the first ranking city, second ranking cities, and there is the third ranking cities. Okay. Now, can you find that there are several similarities which are present here? Like for example, several similar concepts can be framed. General concepts can be framed. Like for example, tell me, can we say here that rank is inversely proportional to the number? Yes or no? Applicable in both the cases? Is it applicable in both the cases? Then in both of them, flow is from lower rank to higher ranks. So you can understand, water is going from sub-tributaries to tributaries, then from tributaries to the main river. Same thing, people are migrating from here to ultimately here. Yes or no? So largely applicable to both. So Berry found that there were many, if you talk about similarities which he tried to showcase that existed between a river system or drainage system and a urban system. Okay? And by this he was trying to show that how similar type of laws can be established, or generalistic laws can be established which can be utilized across the physical and human geography, ultimately to ensure that both synthesis between both these subject matters of geography can be achieved. What's on my? But we can definitely say that Berry didn't succeed as there emerge several differences and complications. Several differences and complications. ठीक है? Like for example, Example, in the second rule, what we find? That it is not fully applicable to urban systems. It is not fully applicable to the urban systems. Like for example, can I say in urban systems are also characterized by the phenomena of counter migration, what we also call it as the suburbanization process. Yes or no? There is also counter migration taking place. People also go from large cities to smaller cities. This is not the case taking place in the river systems. Okay? So we can definitely say that it is very important to understand that human systems are more complicated and dynamic या फिर यहाँ पे लिख सकते हो are too complicated and dynamic to understand from the mechanical perspective of the general system theory. This is the reason such attempts came under severe criticism in late 1960s. In the late 1960s. But we can definitely say despite this problem the prospect of formulating a general system theory appears too lucrative for dichotomous and dualistic discipline like geography. Appears too lucrative for dichotomous and dualistic discipline like geography to be given up easily. With the evolution of supercomputers and information age, we have now more capacity to process geographical information, and maybe succeed in developing a unified theory of geography which was also the dream of its early founders like Humboldt and Ritter। ठीक है, समझ में आ गया? टेल मी फास्ट। Am I visible to all of you? Because here Yogesh is saying that video is stuck, but it should not be stuck from my side. The stream is perfect. Okay. So this is what we simply mean by the general systems theory. So I hope now you will be able to differentiate between what is systems analysis and general system theory. Okay, now we move on the behavioral approach. Okay, it was stuck in between, maybe. Behavioral approach. Now, first of all, when we are talking about behavioral approach, we have to, पहले भी बताया है, again I am reminding you that always differentiate between the terms behavioralism and behavioral approach. So, behavioralism is what? Behavioralism is a philosophy which asserts that knowledge should be based upon study of human behavior. Study of human behavior. Now, how you will do this? Again, there can be two ways: realistic, a kind of realistic way, scientific way, and the philosophical way. So one is you can go for a more scientific approach to achieve this end, and other is a more philosophical approach to achieve this end. And if you talk about the scientific approach, is what we call it as the behavioral approach और simply geography. ये दोनों एक ही मीनिंग होगा, whenever it is being asked in the question. And second, if you talk about, is the humanistic approach or geography. Humanistic approach or geography. Is there problem in video? Because ALS group is also saying that there is some problem, but from my side it appears fully green and the speed is quite fine, about 1700 kbps. Okay. So scientific approach and philosophical approach. Okay. So can you understand now? If a question uses the word behavioralism, suppose there is a question, I'll give you one example. Trace the development of behavioralism in geography, or suppose human geography. And there is another question, that is trace the development of behavioral approach in human geography. Tell me, can I say both of these are different? Yes or no? Question number is more comprehensive in its scope, question number 1, because when I am talking about development of behavioralism, will I also not talk about the development of humanistic approach? Yes or no? So second question is just a sub part. The answer of the second question is just a sub part of question number 1. Okay? So there can be this type of you can understand differences. This type of differences would ultimately be there in the questions which you will have to identify. These fine differences can create huge impact on the marks. For example, if you just write behavioral approach development in question number 1, you will be evaluated from the 50% of the content which you have written. So if it is suppose a 15 marker, already तुम्हारा your evaluation will be out of, suppose out of 15 there is 12 marks which is given to the content, 12 or 13 marks given to the content. So out of that 12 marks, you will be now evaluated out of just 6.5 marks. Okay? So this is the first thing about the this idea of behavioral approach. And here very clearly what we are studying, tell me. Here what we are focusing upon. Can I say here our topic of the syllabus is behavioral approach. Yes or no? Okay. So अगर कहीं पर बीच में what I am just trying to say that because many times it can happen from, because these notes are dictations which I used to earlier dictate in the class, these notes have been typed. Okay, so in between if you find this discrepancy, will you be able to self correct? Okay. So behavioral approach. So very importantly, by late 60s, 1960s, the criticism against quantitative revolution started to emerge from within the positivistic school. It was realized that there was no problem in the split between the old and the new geographies. But problems emerged as the new geography was unable to provide a viable path to understanding. Okay? And old geography was basically what? Ideographic, that is regional, and the new, that is quantitative revolution, was nomothetic. It was realized that theory development was painfully very slow, which led to general disappointment with the accomplishment of quantitative revolution. There was growing realization that models being propounded could only provide a very poor description of the reality. This was primarily because the models were built upon some simplifying assumptions regarding the human behavior, and the models were built deductively on these assumptions. These simplifying assumptions reduced human and its normative question into space. Such deductive characteristics often vaguely reflected the reality of social organization of the society. Thus, these assumptions could provide only weak foundation to understand the reality, and such built science of, and as such built the science of geography. It was thus suggested that geographical theories should be based upon more realistic assumptions of human behavior, which should be arrived at after intensive field research using inductive methodology. Thus, the behavioral approach retained the basic goal of positivistic school, that was construction of a geographical science which was based upon universal laws and theories which have predictive powers. However, it wanted to take different route to achieve this objective, and it was inductive route to achieve this positivistic objective. Thus, behavioral approach has been rightly described as neo-positivistic. Okay? So, this is one context, but suppose if I give you one question to write, and here first question we are starting with describe the context which led to development of behavioral approach in human geography. Human geography. Tell me, कैसे लिखेंगे इसको? I'll give you 2 minutes. I will give you 2 minutes. Think how you will be writing this question. Okay. Tell me. My simple question is, how many of you again thought about using that framework which we have used before? Anyone? Do you remember? Social environment, academic environment, and geography discipline environment. Geography discipline environment. Can I say कि it would be more comprehensive than just writing जो वो पीछे लिखा हुआ था? This which I was reading here, that was also giving us the context of development of behavioral approach. Why behavioral approach emerged? Tell me. But can I say it is just telling one aspect of the issue, the failure of quantitative revolution, and its inability to cope with the problems being faced in the society, unable to formulate relevant theories and models? So it is just this one was, which I was reading before, it was just first part. What was the influence on of the social environment? So there was criticism which emerged in the form of social relevance movement, which affected what? Which affected the positivistic geographers. They were highly criticized, joked upon. I have class में मैंने तुम लोगों को एक दो जोक सुना दिए हैं. And again, as a result, they thought that they should be bringing some change. ठीक है? So tell me, first, if I talk about the context of change in social environment. Context of change in social environment. So what we find that the period of late 1960s was what? It was a period of turmoil. And I have so many times elaborated this point of turmoil. Yes or no? So all those problems, variety of problems were there, and what was found that geography, or here you write human geography because question में human geography है, guided by QR could not provide solutions. Thus, positivistic geographers became what? The center of criticism, and this basically led to what? It led to a self-criticism, led to a kind of self-criticism. And then you talk about that self-criticism, that they felt that the main problem was what? main problem was that the theories models were deductively arrived based on simplifying axioms. And these simplifying axioms like economic, rational, human, isotropic, surface, uniform demand, constant supply, etc. These were what? They were far away from real world. As they excluded the human behavioral variations. ठीक है. So this was seen as the reason why practical theories and models could not be framed. They could not be framed. ठीक है. And thus they wanted what? There was need for change was felt. So what was need for change was the method of formulation of models and theories. Models and theories in geography. पहला पॉइंट समझ में आ गया. सेकेंड पॉइंट, context of change in academic environment. Context of change in the academic environment. So what was essentially the context of change in the academic environment? Very importantly, it was found that in 1930s it was essentially Herbert Simon, and he developed a theory of human behavior, which he also was awarded Nobel Prize for it. Nobel Peace Prize was given to him, or Nobel Prize, Peace था या कौन सा था, I don't remember, but Nobel Prize was given to him for his theory of human behavior. And if you talk about Simon, this Simon's theory was applied in various disciplines and was becoming popular. In fact, if you talk about behavioral approach first entered in geography through physical geography. In physical geography. First entered in physical geography. ठीक है, and from here it was human geographers also became influenced and they adopted this approach. So if I just little bit elaborate on this, physical geography in 1950s and 60s period, and it has even continued afterward. So if you talk about first important person who developed, it was in 1950s and early 60s. So 1950s and early 60s, it was Gilbert White. It was Gilbert White. So White, if you talk about, he wrote a thesis on human adjustment to floods. ठीक है, to floods. In fact, this thesis was published as early as 1945. So first it ultimately developed in physical geography, environmental geography, particularly the hazard studies. It entered into geography. ठीक है, and he basically was working where he was working in the environmental and hazard studies at Chicago University. ठीक है. Later, if you talk about his associates, further developed the behavioral approach by applying Simon's theory of behavior. And if you talk about, very important, his associate, one famous was Kate. So Kate's, if you talk about 1962, found that he came to conclusion that the way men view risks and opportunities of their uncertain environment plays a significant role in the decisions to resource management. So Kate also did what? Developed Using Simon's approach, developed assumptions or behavioral assumptions to study hazard and resource management. So he basically copied what Simon was already talking about. Like for example, what he did, he talked about that people are boundedly rational while making decisions. इससे इनफैक्ट ये सेकेंड पॉइंट है. फर्स्ट था people make choices, and when they are making choices they are trying to be boundedly rational while making these choices and taking decisions. These choices are made on basis of knowledge. And information is evaluated on the basis of predetermined criteria. ठीक है. सो एक्चुअली मैं सीक्वेंसिंग थोड़ा सा चेंज कर देता हूँ. दिस शुड बी एक्चुअली 4, दिस इज 2 एंड दिस इज 3. मेक इट लाइक दिस. Okay, so such type of things were developed. Like for example, if I just talk about people make choices. See, can I say that everything that we are doing presently, everything what we do in our life, aren't we making choice? Yes or no? Aren't you making choice? Everything we are making choice. Like for example, if suppose I am speaking now, I still have choice to speak or to ultimately talk about rubbish things, to speak about behavioral geography, or to entertain you. I can, maybe today there is a very entertaining day of Indian democracy. I can talk about a lot about that, and maybe we all will be entertained. I have a choice here. Okay. Most of the things that we do, they are basically what? They are result of habitual choices that we take. But even when it comes to habitual choices, it has to be understood that these habitual choices have developed because what has happened, people we would have consciously before continued to do the same thing again and again. That is how they ultimately became our habitual choice. They became our habit. Okay? So that is what the first thing is. We always are making choice, which is ultimately based upon our behavior. Choices are made on the basis of knowledge. Okay. So when we are making these choices, they are made on the basis of knowledge. How many things I know, and on the basis of that I will try to evaluate. So very clearly you can understand a person who is living in urban settings, more informed person particularly, probably would be able to reach at a more, ideally speaking, that person would be more able to reach a better decision, better choice. While a person who is living in a remote area may be not be able to reach to a more informed, more better choice. less better choice we can say. Okay? So it is based upon what? The basis of knowledge that we have. Third, information is evaluated on the basis of predetermined criteria. So even if suppose I have knowledge, I still have some predetermined criteria on the basis of which I would be taking my decisions. ठीक है? Like for example, take अभी आज का election results which are there, and so many people were predicting that what happened in the corona times and how the migrant laborers were forced to ultimately flee the cities, and in so much pathetic conditions they had to return to their homeland, which was Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So people ultimately believed that there would be some kind of revengeful aspect in the elections, and there would be a kind of clean sweep for the opposition. But you see, again, people have their own basis of determining what to choose. Like for example, it again is very becoming clear that here caste system is playing a very, very dominant role. A very dominant role. Bihar, it has been always like this. Here again it becomes so much dominant factor in determining the results which are coming today. And you see how people would have developed. They have their own choices. If you look into how politicians are helping them, hardly they are being helped by the politician. I mean, ultimately, if something happens, maybe the social capital they have created through their caste, ultimately affiliations, maybe they are more helpful, and that is why maybe they go for such kind of choices. So they have their own predetermined criteria of how, their own value system. Okay? Now, if this is the case, people will never be fully rational. They would be what? They would be boundedly rational. We try to make the best possible decision for us. Nobody, if suppose you are making a decision, tell me, will you ever think about purposefully hurting yourself? Decision going bad? No one thinks like that. We always try to make the best possible rational decision. But the thing is, we can at best be boundedly rational. Two things are reasons for that. One, we don't have all the information to take the decision. Second, we also don't have all the ability to process all the information. Ability to process all this information. Calculate the most logical option, decision. And thus, what will happen? Our choices, our decisions would always be at best what? Would be boundedly rational. Okay? So this was actually, all these were the assumptions which were developed. This was the part of the theory of behavior which was developed by Simon, and these tenets were used by Cates to ultimately study how people are making choices with respect to, or decisions with respect to, resource management. Okay? So very clearly you can understand that human geographers came in contact with behavioral approach through their affiliations with physical geographers and physical geography. ठीक है, ये पॉइंट क्लियर हो गया. एकेडमिक एनवायरनमेंट का, context of change in the academic environment, how it influenced the development of behavioral approach. Tell me fast. Third, it is the context of change in geography discipline environment. So tell me, can I say this period saw rise of several pioneer scholars, which ultimately paved the way for development of behavioral approach in human geography. And if we talk about most significant person that you have to name here is Julian Wolpert. Julian Wolpert was the main person who ultimately influenced. इसके बारे में I will be talking about later on when we will talk about the development, how it occurred. Others, like for example, very important people like it was Gollage. Others like Brown. Others like Peter Gould. All of these people had strong influence. They were the main pioneer scholars who developed number of concepts. Like for example, Wolpert developed an understanding of why the fertility of farms of Sweden was lower than expected. ठीक है. Similarly, if you talk about Gollage, applied the understanding of this models about space and behavior in the other fields, which was also done by Wolpert. Before Wolpert tried to apply this understanding in migration, this was extended by Gollage. Brown, basically what he did, he tried to develop methods of spatial research, spatial study, spatial behavioral study. Gould tried to develop the approach of mental maps. Okay? So there was huge number of contributions, and these were the main pioneer scholars which would ultimately lead to the development of behavioral approach in geography. Are we clear about how to write the context? Tell me fast. Is the stream working? From my side it is working. तुम लोगों का कोई कमेंट वमेंट नहीं आ रहा. ठीक है. So we'll stop for today. We'll continue this tomorrow. Behavioral approach. Keep on revising, keep on just memorizing. You will see that my promise was that geography will not be a problem for you in the exam. You keep on working towards this goal of memorization and practice, and you will see that it would be realized. In fact, it would become your strength. Okay. Good night to all of you. I would be stopping the class now.